Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the royal family. The royal family has certainly had their fair share of drama this year so far, but that is not necessarily news to most people. Over the course of 18 months, from 1968 to 1969, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip allowed film crews to come in and follow their daily lives to create some sort of royal family documentary. Of course, the content of this documentary was heavily monitored by the royal family and those who deal with their public image, so the documentary itself didn't contain anything extremely dark or surprising. This documentary aired on BBC One in June of 1969, but ended up being banned by the Queen in 1972. The reason was apparently because they believed the film was in danger of killing off the monarchy, whatever that means. They explained that they felt like if they did things like this too often, that it would cheapen them by letting the magic seep out, and that people would just want to know more and more and more. I can see this point of view, but I also feel like there might be something a little more sinister going on here, especially considering everything that we do know. At the end of the day, this documentary is now actually on YouTube if you would like to and choose to go and view it.
In our 9th spot, we have The Men Who Killed Kennedy. And guys, here's your little friendly reminder to hit that thumbs up button because it really helps us out. This is a video documentary series that discusses the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. It was created by British television network ITV. All 9 episodes of this documentary originally aired on the Discovery Channel. Now, any documentary dealing with death and assassinations are going to be dark. This wasn't a lighthearted docuseries, but not the entire series was banned, just the last 3 episodes that aired in 2003. Those 3 episodes were eventually pulled and are banned from ever airing again. This is due to the fact that they were way too controversial. In the final episode, it suggested that Lyndon D. Johnson, the US Vice President at the time of the assassination, had something to do with his death. In the end, it was declared that the documentary was not credible and the documentary should have never aired. And they promised that they would not show those episodes again. So in this sense, it wasn't banned because it was too graphic, but because it was too controversial.
In our number 8 spot today, we have the Yes Men Fix the World. The Yes Men are a pair of activists who have a goal to raise awareness about different social and political issues. The way they go about this, however, has been highly controversial as they create films in which they impersonate people they dislike in an act that they call identity correction. In 2009, their second documentary titled The Yes Men Fix the World came out, which was the sequel to the 2003 film entitled The Yes Men. In this HBO documentary, the pair stir up controversy surrounding a few different issues, such as exposing the people who were profiting off of Hurricane Katrina, or the people who were behind the environmental disaster in Bhopal. It's not necessarily the things that they are fighting against that make people believe they're controversial, but more so the mission statement that the two share, which is that lies can expose the truth. The film, of course, has still managed to survive on past this lawsuit though, and despite being banned from release, there was a special edition of the movie that was released through good old BitTorrent.
In our 7th spot, we have Capturing the Friedmans. This HBO documentary filmed by Andrew Jarecki was released in 2003. Initially, it was meant to be a short film about children's birthday party entertainers in New York. It was titled Just a Clown. But while filming, he made a shocking discovery that completely made him shift gears. So while filming a man named David Friedman, who was a very popular clown, he learned that David's brother Jesse and his father Arnold were guilty of some very bad things to young individuals. It started back in 1987 when the US Postal Service intercepted a magazine of explicit images of young people. It was making its way over to the Friedmans' house. That's when police investigated Jesse and Arnold. The two were then given a stay-at-home order while preparing for court, and they decided to document what was going on. So they had a number of tapes that captured family dinners, private conversations, and arguments, etc. The documentary shows these home videos and follows the two Friedman men. Due to the film's content though, this documentary was banned in a couple of countries.
In our number 6 spot today, we have Earthlings. Earthlings was a film made in 2005 and was a documentary that focused on the way that humanity uses animals. It was definitely meant to shed a negative light on the day-to-day practices of some of the largest industries in in the world that all heavily rely on animals. The footage for the film was largely captured using hidden cameras. This documentary first became controversial not because of the conversation it sparks, but because of how gruesome some of the footage was, particularly the footage from puppy mills. I honestly wouldn't even recommend viewing this footage and would much prefer a different way of educating on the horrors of these things because it really is just terrible. People were also upset because they thought that the film's director was just trying to push a vegan lifestyle on others by using scare tactics, but I'm not quite sure that this was the goal of the film at all. The film saw more controversy just last year when a Ukrainian man named Maxim Kryvosh held a bus with 13 passengers hostage and demanded, along with other things, that the president of Ukraine make a statement saying that watching the film Earthlings was recommended viewing for everyone. The president did end up releasing this statement, and thankfully all of the hostages were released without any incident, and the president's recommendation was then deleted. After this, Earthlings director did also make a statement regarding the situation, explaining that it does not endorse or condone acts of terror, and that its message is one of compassion for all beings.
We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with The Act of Killing. This is a 2012 documentary about the group of people who committed a bunch of murders in 1965 to 1966 as part of the Indonesian genocide. However, the film mainly centers around one of the murderers, Anwar Congo. It is said that he took the lives of 1,000 people. What made this documentary so controversial and disturbing is the fact that the film had Anwar Congo recreate some of his murders. People said in a way it was romanticizing death and violence. I mean, this dude talked in detail about the murders, like saying his preferred method of killing was to use a wire and then strangle his victims. To him, this was a neater way to kill. In the end, the Indonesian government did not like this film, saying it showcased a misleading portrayal of Indonesia.
In our number 4 spot today we have The Bridge. The Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco is a hugely popular tourist destination, but it is also one of the most popular spots in the whole world where people will go to take their own lives. When the filmmaker Eric Steele heard about this extremely sad statistic, he decided he wanted to make The Bridge, in which he would attempt to figure out why this was the most popular spot, but also he wanted to show people attempting or even succeeding with this action so that he could show that basically nothing is being done to try and prevent this from happening. This documentary quickly became very controversial because there were many people who believed that the film was glorifying this action, despite that most definitely not being the film's intention. People felt as though the film turned this into entertainment and normalized the action. There was also some drama between Eric and the members of the Golden Gate National Recreation Area Agency, who said that Eric didn't disclose his true intentions when he applied for a filming permit, but in the grand scheme of what this film is about, I think that this is the last thing that anyone should be worried about.
Moving on, at number 3 we have Zoo. Okay, where do I begin with this one? So basically, this whole documentary surrounds the death of Kenneth Pinyan, a man that passed away in 2005 after engaging in sexual activities with a horse. But that's not the disturbing part. The worst part is apparently the documentary tries to justify this man's actions, and it defends him, saying basically love is love, whether that's a love for another human or for an animal. An actual review said, and I quote, "The documentary spent too much effort trying to defend these actions rather than documenting what actually happened. I thought the point of documentary filmmaking was to be objective and neutral on the subject and to present the evidence and let the audience make up their own minds." So do I even have to explain why this documentary was banned in certain places? I mean, hello, it's a fairly controversial and disgusting topic.
In our number 2 spot today we have Titicut Follies. Different films get banned for a multitude of reasons, which usually comes down to the topics being controversial or up for debate, but this specific documentary was banned because of the fact that it was just absolutely horrifying to every audience. This extremely important but upsetting documentary was made in 1964 and explored the life inside the Bridgewater State Hospital for the criminally insane. As you can imagine, life for the people living inside of this hospital was terrible, and this documentary did not hold back on on shining the light. It showed the neglect that the inmates faced from their caretakers, as well as even more horrible things that they had to endure. This film was originally banned because some people believed they needed to protect the identity of the people portrayed in the film, which I understand, but that does seem kind of backwards and like it would only be benefiting the people who desperately needed to be exposed. In 1991, however, the ban on this film was lifted and people were able to see the reality that many people at this hospital faced every day.
And in our number one spot, we have Faces of Death. This film is banned in 40+ countries. That's just how gruesome it actually is. In 1978, this documentary was released and people were horrified at how graphic it was. The film contained real footage of dead or dying humans and animals. In one scene, you see a body being sliced open in an autopsy. Another scene shows a man being electrocuted. And in another, you see a monkey get beat to death by a hammer. Yeah, they showed all that and more in this film. It's basically like they collected the most disturbing real-life footages from all over the world and compiled them together for this film. As a result of its very graphic content, the movie was banned in 40+ countries. Starting off this countdown, we have Let There Be Light. The 1946 doc Let There Be Light was an educational film about the post-traumatic stress soldiers feel after returning home from war. On June 25th, 1945, Major John Houston was assigned by the Army Signal Corps to create a documentary on this. He visited a bunch of Army hospitals and saw the suffering these soldiers went through. This film was meant to inform the public how hard it is for veterans to fit back into society after what they have gone through. But in the end, the film was banned by the government for a couple of years. It was finally released in the 1980s, but then it was banned by the army because apparently it was too controversial, and also because it was scaring new recruits. On top of that, they wanted their army to seem like great big warriors, and that when Americans got sent to war, they would come back stronger and a huge hero. This documentary went against that.
In our number 9 spot today, we have The Kingmaker. Before I dive into this one, guys, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you're enjoying the video so far, because it really helps us out. The documentary called The Kingmaker was directed by Lauren Greenfield, and it has been banned in the south of Thailand. This film is about the life of Imelda Marcos, who is the wife of the 10th president of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos. The documentary apparently details not only her greed, corruption, and brutality, but also how she influenced her husband and his ruling. It also shows her desire to recuperate her family's public image to return them to what she would call glory. While it is unclear if this really is true, apparently authorities have said that the ban is taking place only because of the poster and title for the movie, not due to the content. A ban over a poster seems a little extreme, but hey, maybe that really is the case.
In our 8th spot, we have Seaspiracy. Shortly after this documentary was published, it went viral online, and a number of countries banned it. This documentary discusses the negative environmental impact of fishing. From pollution in the ocean to overfishing and ghost nets, it just shows you how problematic the big fishing industries are. It honestly makes you feel sorry for the marine life that we're killing, and kind of makes you not want to eat fish anymore. Like, it shows you that a number of whales and dolphins have been found dead with plastic in their systems. But countries banned it so their citizens don't know exactly what is happening out there to the oceans.
In our number 7 spot today, we have Sambal Belacan in San Francisco. In 1997, Madeline Lim made a 25-minute documentary called Sambal Belacan in San Francisco about 3 Singaporean lesbians, and while she dreamed of being able to screen it at festivals in her home country of Singapore, it unfortunately was banned from being viewed there. Her film was winning awards and accolades around the world, but the one place she really wanted to show it wouldn't let her. Madeline wanted to speak to the LGBTQIA+ community in Singapore through her film, as it explored the lesbian experience of Singaporean women and the things they had to endure. In a small turn of events, 23 years after the release of the film, just last year the film was screened for a one-time screening to a limited audience in Singapore. The movie was shown with the highest rating for mature audiences, and while it's not a complete lift on the ban, it is a step in the right direction.
In our 6th spot, we have Under the Dome. Under the Dome is a 2015 documentary all about the air pollution and air quality quality in China. It exposes how toxic the air quality is for people living in China. It also talks about how the government needs to enforce regulations and needs to do more to combat this problem. On the first couple of days after the documentary was released online, it got more than 150 million views, which led to the government banning it and removing it from all Chinese video websites. Why? Well, it exposed a real problem that they don't want to deal with. In fact, this isn't the first time that China has downplayed their pollution problem. During a summit in 2014, it was revealed that their pollution was at 6 times the level deemed safe by the World Health Organization. But they removed that data from the US Embassy's reading.
In our number 5 spot today, we have Haxan. I actually don't know how to say that for sure. Haxan is a half documentary, half fantasy film that comes to us all the way from 1922 when it was first released. Directed by Benjamin Christensen, this documentary aimed to show what it was like during 15th century witch hunts, which sounds both terrifying and extremely interesting, and is what Benjamin calls one of the biggest catastrophes in the history of mankind. Apparently, this film actually is one that laid the foundation for horror movies to come and really pushed the film industry forward, which is quite a feat. This movie, however, ended up being banned in the United States and a few other countries as well because it was deemed too disturbing for public viewing. Benjamin never seemed bothered by the controversial reviews of the film, which truly is a testament to him making the film as he envisioned it needed to be made.
Coming in at number 4, we have India's Daughter. Just a quick warning, this documentary talks about some pretty heavy topics. This documentary discusses the Delhi gang case that happened on December 16th, 2012. On that day, a 23-year-old student was returning home after watching the film The Life of Pi with her friend. While on their way home, she was brutally attacked and was taken advantage of. It was so bad that she passed away days later in the hospital. So it was a pretty intense and heavy and serious documentary. In the end, it was banned in India. The government claimed that the documentary was trying to conspire against India on an international platform, which obviously it wasn't the documentary's intention at all. It also apparently violated a bunch of laws in India, like actually exposing who the victim of this horrific act was and showing images of her. Another reason it was banned because they didn't want it to cause public outrage or inspire criminals.
In our number 3 spot today, we have Jack Johnson versus James Jeffries. This isn't exactly what you think of when we say the word documentary, but I absolutely needed to include it on this list today. On December 26, 1908, Jack Johnson defeated the defending heavyweight champion, Tommy Burns, and became the first black heavyweight champion of the world, which is incredible and should absolutely be celebrated, right? Unfortunately, this was 1908, so it was seen as a threat, and immediately they began trying to find another white person he could fight in order to beat Jack and win the title, and this person was James Jeffries. The fight took place on July 4th, 1910, and this is back in a time when prize fighting was on the rise, and since this fight was so huge, it was of course video recorded. Usually black men wouldn't have even been able to compete for a world title, so it was of course controversial news when he not only competed but won twice. Immediately after the second win, angry racist mob violence began throughout the country, which led to the video of the fight being banned. But this led to some of them being hurt or even killed by these racist people. The fight became notorious all around the world and was one of the most talked about fights for years to come.
In our second spot, we have Plandemic. Released in 2020, this documentary is just one big conspiracy theory video that spreads misinformation about COVID-19. The film features Judy Mikovits, a discredited former researcher who is also an anti-vaxxer. In the documentary, she spreads a bunch of lies, like how she tried to speak up about the truth of COVID-19 and how she was silenced and jailed as a result. In reality, she was just fired from her research job and was arrested after she took a bunch of lab materials and her computer, and then she fled. In the video, she makes several claims like wearing a mask and washing your hands increases the risk of getting the virus, and that the virus is just one big government plan, that the vaccines will be used to then control everyone. She also claims that the cells used in the vaccine can cause cancer, which is also false. As a result of the misinformation spread in the documentary, it has been banned. Any video on the documentary will also be removed, and same with any tweet about it. So let's hope that this video doesn't get removed.
In our number 1 spot today, we have Jenin. Earlier this year, an Israeli court blocked a documentary about the 2002 massacre between Israeli soldiers and Palestinians in the city of Jenin at a refugee camp. The documentary, which is called Jenin, was first brought to the court by a soldier who was in the film. He filed a lawsuit because in the film he is accused of stealing from an elderly Palestinian man, which he claims is untrue. The court not only ordered in favor of the soldier and ruled that the director of the documentary pay both him and the court expenses, but the court also said that they found some other events in the documentary to be untrue. The encounter in 2002 was very deadly and destructive and caused a lot of harm, and there was even a Human Rights Watch investigation. When the documentary was first released, it was banned in Israel, but a Supreme Court later overturned that ban. The documentary is told entirely by survivors of the situation, which is obviously very important. The documentary is now banned again in Israel, but there is no ban on the film on YouTube.
Starting us off at number 10 are the confession tapes. Oh my god, I watched the first episode of this a few years ago at my sister's place and I got so disturbed I did not go home and sleep at home. I was like, no, I'm not sleeping over there. Ain't no one killing me today. Haha, no. Released on Netflix back in 2017, the show is a true crime documentary series that features a bunch of false confessions that ultimately lead to wrongful convictions. And they go into detail about the undercover sting operations that police undertake in order to get these people to confess to something they didn't do. It's dirty and it's horrible to just watch people getting manipulated like that, but you can't take your eyes away at the same time. There's 2 seasons, so around 11 episodes, so it's definitely doable if you need a bit of a scare one night. I highly recommend it. Coming in at number 9 is Trial by Media. So I finished this one myself a few weeks ago and it was disturbing but needed, if that makes any sense. It came out on Netflix this year and it showcases how criminal cases and people's views can be so impacted by the media and its portrayal of events. And of course, I know we all know this already, but the documentary explores a memorable trial in each episode. For example, the first rape case trial to ever be televised in history, and how many supporters the perpetrators got after being convicted despite them being the bad guys. It's super interesting and very much worth the watch. You realize how easily extensive media coverage can affect the outcome of these trials. Everyone likes courtroom dramas like Suits, so imagine the real thing. At number 8 we have The Nightmare. Now if you want to meet the demons in your mind and the ones roaming around your bed when it's pitch black, then this is the documentary for you. Released in 2015, the docu-film focuses on sleep paralysis and everything that comes with it. The inability to move or speak or even react to whatever nightmare they're seeing. Sleep paralysis can induce hallucinations and physical experiences of the darkest of nature. The film had a bunch of participants share their experiences and then they recreated it. I'd probably hallucinate being underwater with a massive great white coming my way. I may not be able to move, but I can still definitely my bed. Filling our number 7 slot is Going Clear. I feel like every few years my obsession with Scientology comes back and I start watching all these documentaries and movies about it and I'm like, madness! This is a madness! No, it's not madness. No, this is a pyramid scheme, people. So released on HBO back in 2015, Going Clear is a 2-hour documentary showing the true nitty-gritty parts of the Church of Scientology. How members of the cult threaten and blackmail other members, and if you leave the church, they literally harass you. What other religion makes you pay thousands of dollars to achieve a higher level of enlightenment? The church drains your bank account in any way possible. Sea Org members sign their lives away by signing a billion-year contract and get a few dollars a week as allowance for all the that they do. It's such a secretive organization. No one has seen Kelly Miscavige in public for years, so it's like, did they kill her? What did they do to her? Did Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes divorce because of the church? Most likely. How can so many people follow a religion that comes from a science fiction novel? Keyword: fiction. Now at number 6 is Madness in the Fast Lane. Now I included the case of this documentary a while ago in another video, but here's the general premise. Back in May of 2008, Swedish twin sisters Ursula and Sabina Eriksson were filmed repeatedly running across a busy M6 highway. They were hit by oncoming traffic multiple times, and then Ursula even went under the wheels of a large truck, yet remained completely unharmed. As the twins were being talked to by police, one of them gets free and runs right in front of an oncoming lorry and and then the other one runs out and gets hit by a car. The Laurie twin is in critical condition, but the other one is remarkably fine despite being in an accident that would usually kill someone. After being released, Sabina ends up stabbing a man to death a few days later, and apparently they both suffer from a very rare form of shared psychosis, where the mental health of one influences the other one's sanity. The documentary tries to make their behavior make sense with the help of a criminal psychiatrist. Coming in at number 5 is Dreams of a Life. This one really makes you think about who would truly miss you if you died. Released back in 2011, this drama documentary tells the story of Joyce Carol Vincent, a woman who was found dead in her London apartment back in 2006. Only problem was, she had died in December of 2003 and no one had noticed she was gone for 3 years. Her body was surrounded by her still wrapped Christmas presents and the TV on. How unbelievably sad. By the time they found her, her body had decomposed so much that there was no way to figure out how she had even died. So the documentary interviews people who knew Joyce, friends, exes, even acquaintances, to try and find out how someone can die so close to a busy street in one of the most populated cities in the world and not be noticed. At number 4 is Tabloids. This docu-film came out back in 2010 and it tells us about the love story of Joyce McKinney and Kirk Anderson. I mean, no, I wouldn't go as far as to call it that. But the story goes as normal. Boy and girl meet, they fall in love, but the boy turns out to be Mormon, the girl is not, and he becomes a missionary and is sent to London without even telling the girl or breaking up with her. See, not so common. Joyce became so paranoid about the church keeping them apart, she hired a pilot and bodyguard and went to London and essentially kidnapped Kirk. She took him to a house she had rented with handcuffs and other toys and repeatedly assaulted him, but she of course said everything was consensual. Kirk claimed she had said she would continue until she got pregnant and actually forced him into her car at gunpoint. He then proposed to her in hopes that she would free him, and by then he was already reported as a missing person. The authorities eventually got involved, but seeing and hearing both sides of the story is just so disturbing. Like, Joyce literally thinks she's done nothing wrong. You may also know this case as the Mormon Sex in Chains case, which kind of sounds better than what I said. Filling at number 3 slot is Jesus Camp. I feel like Islamophobia has reached such an all-time high right now, and this documentary shows that pretty clearly. Most of you have probably heard of the 2006 documentary Jesus Camp because it was huge. It follows Kids on Fire, a Christian summer camp for kids where you'd think they'd be learning hymns and sermons and making friendship bracelets, but it's not even close. Their days are filled with preaching Islamophobia, homophobia, and a militant, violent call of action to anyone that doesn't have Christian beliefs. The camp teaches kids how they have prophetic powers and how they have to take America back in the name of Christ. They literally tell the kids that Muslim children in the East are taught the same thing about Americans and how they get taught how to use bombs and weapons in their own summer camps at that age, and of course how they should be doing the same. People have said it's the most authentic representation of the evangelical Christian community. I've actually seen this and it was pretty messed up. It attracted so much controversy that the camp actually got shut down, or rather rebranded. Now at number 2 is Titicut Follies. If there's one genre of documentaries I love more than any other, it's definitely the ones featuring old mental asylums and institutions and how everything worked back then. Yo, this video is making me realize I'm dark as hell. Either way, this documentary was released back in 1967, so it's probably the oldest one on the list, but it explores the lives of the patient inmates of Bridgewater State Hospital for the criminally insane. It shows you how badly these people were treated, their empty cells, the fact they were force-fed and stripped in public. The superintendent would only let the director film subjects who were deemed the most mentally competent, which made the whole thing that much shadier. You guys have seen American Horror Story Asylum, like going on behind the scenes, we all know it. When it was released, the state got involved, claiming it violated the patient's privacy despite them all saying it was okay to be filmed. But really, the state was just worried because the documentary was making the state-owned institution look bad because it was bad. It was banned multiple times but then released again in 1991, and by that time it had already helped so many abusive psychiatric wards shut down. So I mean, go there. And finally, at number 1 is Abducted in Plain Sight. This one was the most popular true crime docu-film on Netflix for a really long time, and I can't even tell you how many times I hovered over it before working up the balls to actually watch it. It's released back in 2017. The film follows the kidnapping of Idaho teenager Jan Broberg Felt by her neighbor Robert Berchtold. And he didn't just kidnap her once, he kidnapped her twice. Reddit user Heather P12 even said it was plain creepy and messed up from the very first second. It was voted as best documentary 4 times, so I mean, you may as well watch it.